Recording in progress.
Go ahead. All right, roll call then.
Okay. So Commissioner Sovereign,
Here.
Commissioner Castagna,
Here.
Commissioner Evans,
Here.
Commissioner Thomas,
Here.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Here.
and Commissioner Witowski.
Present. Let's see, the first item is confirm the annual appointments. I think we've all read this, but you want to give a short summary, Inga?
So, for boards and commissions, once a year, there's a rotation of.
Inga.
Sorry. Okay, so I'll give a quick summary, which is according to council direction, once a year, we rotate chair and vice chair. And the goal is to give everybody a chance to serve as chair and vice chair. So the individual who has been serving as vice chair typically steps into the chair role. And then the person who has served for the longest on the commission without having served as chair becomes the vice chair. So, so according to that, the lineup would be that Commissioner Evans becomes chair and Commissioner Thomas becomes vice chair. And our admin assistant, Francesca Garibaldi, reminded us all that a vote isn't needed, but we do need to have agreement, I think, to move forward. So it'll be good to know if everybody's comfortable with that rotation.
And you can turn down the appointment.
Yes, and you can turn down an appointment, but you don't lose your place in line. So if you have a conflict for some reason one year, you can be asked again the next.
You want a consensus or do you want to vote?
It's just consensus, right?
So I think that first, if anybody has any discussion.
I'd like to discuss not the personnel that are chosen by this, but the rule. If you take a careful look at the data in that table, you find that almost always a person becomes chair or vice chair within the first year that they're serving. And you can see that by comparing the appointed dates and the chair and vice chair dates, which to me is either deliberately trying to make a set of rules that keeps the commissions from having experienced leadership, or they simply didn't understand what they were doing when they made the rules.
Point of order, these, we can't change this. We can't do anything about it.
No,
So
that's totally true. The council has to do this, but I guess I would like to see us agendize a discussion with somebody from the council about this situation.
Well, two quick comments. I've been the current chair, soon to vacate that position. I've been on for 13 years. Bob Evans is going to be the new chair. He's been on for 9 years. I understand your point, Mike, but if there's somebody, and I think it happened with Kathleen Wall, when she was going to be chair after a very short term, she just said, I'm not ready. I'm going to wait a year. So there's always that option that if somebody, sometimes we have somebody from a different board, like the library board or whatever, and they feel very comfortable chairing a meeting. Other people who don't, they can always say, I'm going to wait a year or two. So I think they always have that option.
Yes, they do.
They do. Any other comments? Otherwise, I'm going to pass this gavel that goes back to 1849. It was actually from upstairs in Colton Hall to Mr. Evans. Do we have to change seats or anything? Or no?
No, you're
No.
okay.
No. All right. Take over.
Okay, so we have a new chair and a new vice chair. Thank you very much for serving. And we haven't gotten to that part of our agenda yet. Okay, so,
So the next item of business
yes.
is the approval of the minutes or the approval of our yeah, it's the approval of the minutes because we're now on consent items.
Okay,
So anybody have any questions or corrections for the minutes? If not, do I hear a motion? So moved. A second,
Second.
any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
I
Opposed?
abstained because I was absent.
so can we do that because,
Everyone's here.
everyone's here? All right, great.
Okay, so the next item is
Public comment.
public comments. That's right. And we have public today.
Yeah.
So this is the time when anybody from the public can express themselves on any item that's not on the agenda.
And one moment, I just need to explain to potential viewers how they can also join the meeting on Zoom. You can use the link or phone number on the agenda at isearchmonterey.org to call in by telephone, dial toll free 833-568-8864, enter meeting ID 161-622-2299, followed by the pound sign. If prompted to enter a participant ID, press pound. Detailed instructions on using Zoom are available at monterey.org/public meetings. To make a public comment using Zoom, raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand button in the Zoom toolbar. If you dialed in by phone, raise your hand by dialing *9 and unmute yourself when called upon by dialing *6. Attendees will be muted until it is your turn to speak. For those present here in the council chamber, you are welcome to come up to the podium. Public speakers will be called on in the order of their raised hands or that they are standing in line. We ask that you please stay within the time limit established for today's meeting that will be shown using a countdown timer on the screen. If you are connected live on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. Today's meeting is also streamed live on the city's YouTube account at youtube.com/City of Monterey with an approximate 10-second delay, and on Comcast channel 25 with up to a 90-second delay. If you plan to make a public comment, please join the meeting using Zoom or by telephone and ensure you join in time to accommodate the delay if you are not here in person. As always, we look forward to receiving your public comment. Thank you so much. And if you would like to state your name for the record.
Stephen Lightfoot.
Great, thank you.
I'm the man who drives that yellow website van, LennonMurderTruth.com. Last month, I subpoenaed 6 officers for a hearing on maybe my 3rd or 4th charge this last year or 2. And they didn't come because the judge didn't know better that they were there for the hearing and not the trial. So they've already forwarded my attempts to subpoena 6 line officers, most of them under your jurisdiction under Dave Hober. No less than 5 of his officers have lied and can be proved to have lied in their efforts to cite me recently, including a Seaside officer who made things up out of whole cloth about how he phoned me when he never did. My phone was discontinued a month earlier. Nutshell, I've been harassed, arrested, beaten up, handcuffed, pistol whipped, kidnapped, slandered in the national media, slandered in the local media. And I've been a victim of every strategy our government can pull off to demonize me and make me a bad person, not to be trusted. But the people are finding out, listening to me sing downtown, that, hey, this guy, he must not be too kooky after all, if he can pull that off. Well, what's he trying to do? Impress us? Yeah. And I'm going to impress you that I am a celebrity of the highest order. I am going to take over this. I'm going to put Monterey on the map. I'm going to put America on the map. I'm going to totally change the whole world with this story about Stephen King killing John Lennon. Turns out I've uncovered the real commie plot that Nixon, Reagan, Clinton, Obama, Bush, all the way back, for all we know, to Wilson, have been up to since the Soviet invasion of our culture back in the 50s. They're not stopping. That's what they do. Stephen King killing John Lennon prompted all these school shootings you're seeing. Wrote about a student shooting up his classmates in the early 70s when there was no shootings. He started the fire. The government's using him to incite insanity. The bumper on my van now reads silent US brainwashed psychotic. Wow, what a mouthful. In other words, either I'm sick or you're all sick. Well, the evidence proves it's all of you, not me. I'm a gifted high IQ hero, sticking his neck out, getting harassed, getting harassed for picketing the cover up all the time. It's been going on for many years. Leon Panetta is one of my enemies. His son is one of my enemies. More sophisticated scholars than me describe him as a man in bed with Chinese communists, part of the world order takeover of this country. He's no good. I know for a fact all your courts and all your police are corrupt in Monterey County. The courts and the police are corrupt. Panetta is the reason why. He's the highest man on the totem pole. His associates are Bush and Reagan, the people I'm exposing with Nixon. Read my flyer, everybody, on LennonMurderTruth.com. Footnotes page.
Thank you.
So I'm going to check back with you next, every week you do this?
I would suggest that you drop to the city council, not to the museums commission.
Is that what this is?
This
Yes.
is the museums
Well,
commission,
I just came in here to give a flyer. I thought it was a city council meeting. When do they have their meetings?
Tuesdays. Check the city's website.
The next meeting is on the 19th, Tuesday, the 19th.
Thank you.
At
Right
4
here?
PM. Yes,
Right here.
right here,
At what time?
4 PM.
Thank you. Well, at least you're in the know. Clint Eastwood's involved in my scandal here. He had me knocked out with a Rohypnol drink somebody gave me for free while I was dating one of his girlfriends in 1980. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. We have a very full agenda, need to keep moving. Okay, the next item
We
is.
never got those kind of people when I was sheriff. I just want to say that.
They were scared of you. Yeah.
Do we have any other public comments?
Okay. Moving on. We received the Museums and Cultural Arts Commission activity report for May and June. So
Yeah.
Inga
Okay.
and Jordan.
Sure. So because we skipped a meeting last month, you get the benefit of seeing 2 months of worth of activities in this report. And I'm just going to turn it over to Jordan, who will highlight a few of the activities. And Francesca is welcome to chime in too if you want to say anything about the work that you've been doing. But we'll start, Jordan.
All right. Hi, everyone. So as Inga mentioned, this is a 2-month report, but it is not as long because I was out sick last month, so that made it shorter for you. But so first we'll start off with, I finished writing the history of the Buffalo Soldiers in Monterey, to the best of my knowledge. If you've read it, you'll understand that there is still a lot of missing history out there. So I will continue to search, try to get those artifacts that are out there that supposedly have the information that we're looking for. But for now, we have at least a completed history. And if things all go to plan and we're able to bring on more staff, then I can finish the actual exhibit in the museum.
You know, one time, Jordan, I know when we talked at Colton Hall, we talked about putting items of interest on an iPad or whatever, so that people can see and yeah, I mean, you can put pictures and text and all that. Is that possible for something like this?
I mean, technically, yes, but we do not have anything like that. We don't have anything original from the Buffalo Soldiers here. We just have maybe 4 photographs. And they're also not the greatest. Some of them are kind of blurry. And so that is, other than that and scanned newspapers from the Monterey Public Library, we don't have anything. I was able to find a uniform, not an original. So we were able to get a uniform, a mannequin. Dr. John Langelier donated authentic buttons and insignias from the 9th Cavalry, but it's highly unlikely that they were not from Monterey. And other than that, we really don't have anything to add to the the exhibit other than a map that National Parks has given me permission to use from when they went from Monterey to Yosemite and Kings County or Kings National Park. So the plan is to put those pictures, the mannequin and that map up in the vicinity. Otherwise, there's really not much.
How about that gentleman who the Buffalo Soldier historian has all the material? Can he send you digital photograph that you could use? And
I mean, he can. Will he is the question. So
Yeah.
I talked to him on the phone months ago and he said he has lots of items, like
yeah,
and thousands of photographs and items from Monterey during this era. I have emailed him twice. I emailed him this history and I haven't heard anything back.
So I think and maybe somebody did volunteer. I think we wanted a commissioner who would go, or it could be more than one commissioner.
Yeah, to either reach out or,
And then to go with Jordan to view the artifacts and
I mean,
talk.
I'd be happy to do that as one who's worked in museums all my life. I'm
Yeah.
happy to reach out to the guy and say to the former
that'd be great.
museum curator that maybe he could help us.
Okay, so why don't we start off by giving you his contact
Yeah.
information. You can introduce yourself. And then hopefully we'll line up a visit. And Jordan and you and any other commissioner who would like to go, well, we have to keep it to 3 commissioners, could go on a visit.
Yeah, because he's in San Jose and he claims to have storage units full of
Yeah, him
items.
saying that in his talk.
Yeah, and he doesn't sell or donate. He only lends them out. And he said he would lend us items, but again, I can't get a hold of him. But really, I just need scans. Like if I could just scan some photographs, letters, anything, official documentation, like that's all we need.
But I think that human contact, if
Yeah.
you could actually go, shake his hand, look him in the eye, say hello, then that will kind of help further the relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, sounds
Right,
good.
so yeah, I'll email you his contact information and hopefully something comes of that.
Great.
And then let's see. Oh, so I guess I had some foresight because in May I started writing a museum's access guide since I'm the only person who can
Yeah.
just go and do whatever is needed. And then I went and got COVID and got sick and had to try to explain to people how to access the museum. So I am currently working on that. And so hopefully I can get that finished this month, but I'm very far behind from being out sick. And then one of the big highlights of May was on May 2nd, we Santa Clara High School came back to the Pacific Biological Laboratories for the first time since 2019. And this is a very big group where there was over 200 students that come in and we just rotate every 15 minutes. They just rotate from one room to the next room to downstairs and then go out. And while they're doing that, the teachers have it set up perfectly that the students go around Cannery Row and find the locations from the book and take pictures and do videos. And I kind of have to do like these oral visual reports.
Mhm.
And so it was great to have that. Everyone had fun. The docents had fun. And we opened Colton Hall for our summer hours. So we're now open Thursday through Sunday from 10 to 4. And then other than the Buffalo Soldier history, I'm proud of this personally, this achievement. I figured out what the bricks out front under mean. So if you walk down this pathway to Few Memorial, you'll see some bricks with CH in there. They're actually from the San Francisco City Hall from 1970 or 1870s when it was being built. It was finally finished in 1897. Then the earthquake hit and destroyed it. So the bricks were dispersed and reused. So they were found at Alcatraz. Our former museum attendant, Tyler, found a brick at General Vallejo's home in Sonoma. And so he found that back in April and that made me restart my search. And through that search, I found that the CH actually stands for City Hall. And it's from the San Francisco City Hall. So that was a fun little connection there.
Good detective work.
Thank you.
One question on the graphs. I had a little trouble connecting the graphs to the narrative as far as how many individuals visited.
Unfortunately, when it transfers from when I send it to someone else, the numbers don't line up, but let me find the page here. So in May, in Colton Hall, there was 538 visitors. And at the Monterey, the Presidio Monterey Museum, there was 220 visitors. And at the Pacific Biological Laboratories, we had 291. And compared to previous years, it is considerably lower because of
Yeah, right.
the pandemic.
And the reduction in the hours.
Yeah,
So the numbers in the narratives really are the real numbers, whereas the ones on the graph kind of got,
correct. Yeah, they
Blue.
kind of get moved over, but it just shows you compared to 2017 for Colton Hall, there was 1,492 where we
Yeah.
had 538.
right, yeah.
But yeah, it's just the numbers just don't line up sometimes.
We have to open things up first.
Yeah,
I wonder if you and Francesca might be able to work it out, because it's partly going from a Word document to a PDF, I think, that shifts those numbers.
I might be able to make it just a picture and put it in there so it's not a graph.
Yeah.
So I could do that.
Okay, that would be great.
And another, let's see, the last bit for May was on May 26th, I gave a tour to Lisa Miller at the Pacific Biological Laboratories. She is the great granddaughter of Ed Ricketts. And this was her second trip there. She had been there 20 years ago. I think as a teenager, she showed me a picture of her and Nancy and her mother. And so she spent the day before spending time with Don Coors from the not Moss Landing, I'm sorry, Hopkins Marine Station. And she really, until she met with Don and she really had no idea the gravity of like how big Ed Ricketts is like in the history world, and especially here in Monterey in the marine biology world. So it was a lot of fun taking Lisa and her husband around and just showing like all these things, be like, oh, this is what happened here. And so it was a lot of fun. And then lastly here, for June, there was only one notable event that took place, and that was I met with 2 of the 3 new library and museums director candidates, and gave them a tour of Colton Hall, and just talked about museums in general and Monterey history. And so it was fun speaking with them. They were both enthusiastic about our history and what we do, and I have no idea who has been chosen, but we'll see. And that is my report.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions? Mike?
You mentioned both, I think, PBL docents and Presidio. I know you staged that event honoring them a month or 2 ago, which is very good. But I wonder if we ought to recognize them by name somewhere in the report.
Oh, sure. I know I did
There may be
mention,
privacy questions about that because they're volunteers, but
yeah, I do try to give them, let's see, I believe I know on May 2nd, Bonnie Kenny, Robbie Finley, and Susan Murphy were part of the PBL tours of 200 students. And so we're very grateful for them. I want to say that I mentioned them, but I do try to mention them, and I can make an effort to do that in the future.
Jordan, I think it's great what Santa Clara High School did on their visit to the PBL, but I wondered if we could transfer that to our local schools and possibly write a letter to Superintendent Diffenbach and say, this is a great opportunity for Monterey, Seaside, Marina High, for them to do the same thing, and that this is an opportunity out there that they should be aware of.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, we can try to also incorporate that into Colton Hall. Because what pre-pandemic, what used to happen is there was someone locally set up collaboration between the Museum of Art across the street and Colton Hall. So the students would go to Colton Hall and then they would go to the museum across the street and then either go back to school or go to the aquarium. So, and so there have been things in the past like that. I can talk to our museum attendant, Jeff Landsman, about that since he knows who was in charge of that and see if we can get that going and try to get something with the lab.
Great.
Yeah, with the lab is just more difficult because
Yeah.
you really want high schoolers, not younger children, because
I think the entry there is through faculty more than maybe the superintendent, because what the people in San Jose have done is developed something that they're doing in class. They probably are producing some kind of audio visual report or whatever the kids, whatever media the kids want to use. But it's a class assignment, and they're gathering data for that assignment.
And a lot of schools have more sort of tours and visits and that sort of thing towards the end of the school year. I was contacted by somebody who was affiliated with some students at Carmel High, and they wanted to know if we could open the lab for them the very next day. And it was like an oceanography club. And I said, unfortunately, we can't do it at such short notice, but that would be the kind of thing where there's an equivalent kind of group at Monterey High. I'm looking at Bill. I don't know if he remembers their name. You might remember their name. Anyway, they study, oceans is their specialty. And
Yeah.
so maybe for their sort of end of year celebration, we could get them to come and do a tour
Good
of
idea.
Brigitte's lab.
Okay, any other comments or questions? No? All right, thank you. So now we're down to public appearance items, and our first public appearance item is to receive an update on the museums and cultural arts staffing. So it sounds like Inga's on.
Oh, and do we have to ask if there was any public comment about the activity report, Francesca?
If there is any public comment, you may please come to the podium. If not, there is no public comment on this item.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So the update on the staffing is that thanks to the communication from this commission saying how we needed additional staffing, and then the work of our outgoing chair meeting with Hans and so forth, we were able to get a commitment from the city manager to create a 30-hour-a-week position. And that decision was made after the packet, I guess, had already been published for the budget meeting where the council adopted the budget, which was on the 29th of June. So they've asked us to bring some information back on the 19th. And the understanding will be we'll get a 30-hour-a-week position that will be an artifact specialist. And then we'll also be able to use Ferguson funds to have a second 20-hour-a-week PTS artifact specialist. So that's the staffing plan.
Okay, any progress on your replacement?
Oh, and I could say that, yes, so a finalist has been selected and has signed paperwork, and the negotiations and so forth have taken place. And then we're just waiting for the standard fingerprinting and background check to be completed. And then the library board will have a special public meeting where they formally appoint the new library director, and then we'll do a press release and we'll be able to announce the new person. And the hope is that they will start on this mid-August.
Is that appointment going to be on the board's July 28th meeting?
No, they actually want to do it ahead of that. They don't want to wait that long. So they're hoping to do a special meeting, but you never know how long the screenings take with the fingerprinting and everything. We've had some really bad luck sometimes with the fingerprinting having to be redone and so forth.
Obvious question, can we know who the candidate is?
So I can't publicly say at this point who the finalist is. We had really strong candidates, a really strong group of finalists. And but I can't share that information.
Could you share once you write the staff report or whoever writes it, for the board, library board, could you send a copy to the commission?
Sure. Sure, I will double check that with the because as soon as the packet is published, then I could share it with the commission as well.
Yeah.
Thank
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments from,
Is it a fait accompli that Jordan will get the regular part-time, or does he have to compete?
So the way the city does their recruitment for full-time and regular part-time, I was informed today is that we do have to do a recruitment.
Right.
So there'll be a internal recruitment for that position.
and will the commission be involved in interviews and that sort of thing?
No, it will just be the department head.
Just the department head? Okay.
Yes. But the department head is happy to take any comments from commission.
Make it be Jordan.
All right. Is there any public comment on this issue?
There is any public comment, please come to the podium. There is no public comment.
And online?
No.
Okay. All right. Then I don't think there's any need for a motion on this one. So we can move on to number 5, which is to receive the overview of museums divisions Ferguson funds. And so again, I guess, Inga, you're on.
Yes, okay, so former Chair Wachowski said, Inga, could you please brief us on the Ferguson funds? Where did they come from? Are there any restrictions on them and so forth? And so that's I pulled the history from the wonderful work of Claire Rigg, who put this together some years ago, but I did get the latest figure for what the current value of the Ferguson Fund is. So Ferguson Fund, it's the Ferguson Family Trust. And it's from the estate of Charlotte Lawrence Ferguson, who was the wife of General Robert Ferguson, who was stationed at the Presidio. And so the museums was one of several charities that received funds, including SPCA and Carmel Public Library. And the value of those funds is $79,939. And basically the thinking was that the funds would be used towards activities associated with the Presidio. So in the past, we've used some funds towards staffing, and we can use it towards collection support as well. And a city council resolution is required in order to expend those funds.
So the commission wanted to spend some money on a physical exhibit, say outside of the Presidio Museum relating to Buffalo soldiers or whatever, and that the commission could use this subject to city council approval.
Right, as long as it had a connection with the Presidio Museum.
You know, brief anecdote, when I first was a docent at the museum, Mrs. Ferguson and her little white dog used to show up. I didn't know who she was.
Oh, my goodness.
And she'd just walk in and look around and everything. And Jim Conway was the one that told me her history and who she was related to.
Wow. So thanks to you, and you probably had a little.
Well,
Dog biscuits for them.
thanks to Jim. Jim really cultivated her.
So this fund is not being considered as, an
endowment.
yeah, an endowment, and we're spending down our principal. Is the fund currently invested?
Yes, so
And do we have any idea what it throws off annually or whatever?
I don't have that number in front of me. I think it earns a few $1,000s a year. And
We know
it's,
with whom? Is it through the community foundation or someone else?
okay, so no, so it's not with a community foundation because the funds were left to the city. And so the city invests its, the trust funds and so forth. And that's how we receive our earnings. And I'm not sure how those funds are invested.
Yeah, it would seem to me that it's, well, in my experience with AMP, for instance, AMP had an endowment and they ended up spending it. And so they ended up losing the building that they might have purchased otherwise. So it seems to me that we have to be a little more careful about, or not quite so,
So
Maritime Museum
Yeah.
had to-
I guess one of the issues, of course, is that that could be a suggestion to city council that you want to take a certain amount of funds from one of the funds that is associated with the museums and put it into an endowment. In this case, we lease that property with the Army.
sure.
And so what would happen to the endowment if our lease was to end and not be renewed? Or, you know, the Army could decide they don't want to continue that lease. So that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Do we
Um,
know, we have 79,000 now,
Yes.
80 roughly, and we're gonna spend, what, 29 of it?
25.
25. Okay, so we're gonna have 55,000 left.
Yeah. That's what concerned me.
Yeah. Good point on whether we can keep the museum, but I had the same thought. We have an endowment and we need every penny paid out every year.
Yeah.
But we don't touch the capital.
Mhm,
Otherwise, you don't get any money paid out. So
right. So, I
it
mean,
would
that's,
be maybe a good topic for us at a future meeting.
I would think that if you want to endow one of the museums, the place I would start is probably Colton Hall. Because that's the chances of us retaining Colton Hall into perpetuity are higher than the other facilities
Yeah.
that we have. So,
Are there other funds then? This is not the only one?
correct,
Ah,
correct.
Okay,
There's an art acquisition fund and there is a museums trust fund. And so maybe the commission would like a report on all the different funds and what their values are and what restrictions there are
Yeah,
on
that
those
would be
special
helpful.
funds.
yes.
I know, I heard you say, John, about the Maritime Museum. Of course, their endowment was quite a bit larger.
Yeah.
They were talking about, several $1 million or whatever. And their intent was to keep the endowment and spend the interest, but of course, they ran into some rough days and they were spending some of the endowment. So it would be interesting to see how much money totally we have.
Mhm.
There are also grants out there. For example, Old Monterey Foundation gets a grant every year from that sweetheart historian, Marcia DeVoe.
Yeah.
She created, she wanted to give her house as a museum, but it wasn't museum quality. But instead, I believe she sold the house, put all that money into community foundation. But she gives us $10,000 a year for, we've used it for historic lectures. We used it to help OMBA with the July 4th. So there are even local grants here through the community foundation that we can tap some money into.
Yes. And the library has, of course, an endowment fund. So it's with the community foundation. And that concept is that only the earnings can be touched. There's like one opportunity a year where you can take out the earnings, or if you don't say anything, it just gets reinvested over and over again. And since it was created in, I think it was 2010 or so, there's a minimum that was required to establish that fund. And it was the Friends of the Library who established that or gave the money for the board to establish that fund. But anyway, they've only taken funds out once. I'm not funds, but the earnings once.
Jordan,
And I'd like to add, speaking of grants, we're very fortunate to have Susan Klusmeyer on as a museum attendant at Colton Hall. Because she is going out of her way. She's like, hey, we should write a grant. We should do this. I'll do it while working at Colton Hall. So I know Susan is going to start working on some grant writing for us as well, since she has experience in it.
Yeah, it almost sounds like we need a finance workshop one day, so that we know what all these various funds are. And maybe we could think about a plan to how that might be used and which, well, this I think sort of flows into the next topic, which is, well, 2 topics down when we talk about the 2024 work program. Okay, any other questions or comments on the Ferguson Fund? And do we need public comment on Ferguson Fund?
Yes, if you'd like to make a public comment, please come to the podium. Otherwise, there are no public comments.
Thank you, Francesca. Okay, so now we're up to the review and discuss commissioner compensation. So again, Inga, you want to introduce this one?
Sure. So according to the city code, section 2-3.09A, folks who serve on the Museums and Cultural Arts Commission and on other boards and commissions for the city get a stipend for every meeting they attend. And one of our commissioners has declined the stipend and said, hey, let's agendize this, because if others declined as well, then that would be money in the museum's budget that's not being spent, I think. And maybe I'm putting words into your mouth. Commissioner Castagna, why don't you say what you'd like to say about the stipend?
Well, we don't need to discuss it, just make,
situation?
we should be aware that that's an option. I know I tried to do it a couple of years ago and was shot down that I'd have to accept the money and then write a check, which seemed ridiculous. But it turns out that if we all did that, and I don't have the number in front of me, it'd be over $2,000 a year that would be turned back to the city. So it's just something I'd recommend, and there's really not much need for discussion.
So I'll mention in the case of the library board, our budget in the library still hasn't been restored. I think we're at 65% of where we were before. But individual trustees have waived their stipend with the stipulation that that money be used towards staff development, because we used to have a fund for people to go to conferences and trainings and so forth, and that was zeroed out because of COVID. So anyway, so that's how it was handled with the library board. And then I did want to say that when this came up before, our assistant city manager said a commission can't waive their stipend altogether. I mean, in mass or whatever. It's an individual decision for each commissioner, and we don't want to have anybody feel pressured, no peer pressure or anything.
So if we want to decline it, all we have to do is send you an email and say, we declined the stipend and that money should go toward the museum budget.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
Right?
Do we have any indication that it actually ends up coming back to the library or?
It's in our budget. So it's not as if it's not held in some other area of the city's budget. It's in the museum's budget as a line item.
Thank
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Any public comment?
I have,
Oh, sorry.
given the previous item and this one, we may want to have a fuller financial discussion at a future meeting. We may want to have a financial committee look at various options. I'm not sure we need a standing committee, but might be able to develop a couple of options for us and let us know that there's more than one thing, like, yes, writing a check back every month. Yeah.
Okay. So with that, we need any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Okay. Review and update the Path of History grant.
Yes, so we learned on the 30th of June that the Community Foundation awarded the museums a $30,000 grant for our project, which was titled, thanks to Vice Chair Thomas, Walking the Path of History in the 21st Century, a new look at those forgotten. So we got the funding for it. We had asked for 50,000. We said we wanted 30,000 for some consultants to work with us and 20,000 for signage. So I thought what we could do is go forward with getting the consultants and look at some other funding sources for signage and take it from there. So anyway, so that's exciting news. And I do believe I attached the application just to refresh our memories about what it is that we said we wanted to do. Basically, we want to look at, or I should back up. So the city council would like us to re-examine our history through the lens of diversity and equity and inclusion. And so what better way to do that than look at our Path of History plan and through that lens, and then create a couple of paths that would be telling our history from a group that had been marginalized. And so we had the subcommittee that I'd worked with, which was Commissioners Kowski, Chair Evans, and Vice Chair Thomas, I believe. We had identified that we wanted to do the Japanese American neighborhood and another area, which was it starting at Fulton Hall and looking at the immediate environs, and but not focusing on the traditional kind of colonial adobes kind of story that people have heard more often than the other stories. So anyway, so I think Francesca deposited the check maybe yesterday. It came in the mail, and so we've got the money. And of course, we need to have the council appropriate those funds to our project. But I think the next step is to get the subcommittee together to talk about, if we're gonna assign different folks different roles. But I think I have a list of potential consultants that we could reach out to. We have to write an RFP and we could get started.
And we need to know what our consultant is supposed to do.
Exactly. So in writing the RFP, we will.
I have kind of a newbie question.
Sure.
Who wrote the grant application?
Me.
Well, thank you.
Good job. Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously, nice job.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think it would be good to have a I know you have a full plate for the rest of the month before you leave, but if it's possible, just to have a short subcommittee meeting with you and Jordan to make sure there's good transferability and just a rough outline of the RFP for discussion. Again, I don't expect a polished RFP, but at least if we can discuss it, and have a short subcommittee meeting in July.
Yeah, okay, we'll see what we can do. And I know that Nat is very excited about this as well. So Nat is working on a citywide diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. And he's also very enthusiastic about our history. So I'll see if I can get him to sit in too, so that we have that continuity too.
Okay, other questions or comments on this issue? No, all right. Public comments.
There are no public comments.
All right, thank you. Yeah, that was, so now we're up to the review for the strategic plan for 2024 and discuss the work program for 2023.
So this is sort of an opportunity to remind ourselves what we had set as priorities to work on, and then to be thinking about what our focus should be and what are some achievable due dates for that focus. And one possibility, not that I don't want to walk through it line by line now, but one possibility would be to reconvene or convene a subcommittee to look at it, to talk with the director and talk about what seems and Jordan, and see what sort of seems reasonable. One question would be can we start the concert series again? Or, how reasonable is that to try to achieve this fall, that sort of thing. And I think it sort of depends on staffing, a lot of it, as we know in the past.
Yeah, it sounds to me like maybe we should postpone that actually till we have the new director. And maybe at the same time, or I'm not quite sure what the sequence would be, but the financial discussion ought to happen too, so that we have an idea of what we're capable of, both personnel and dollar wise.
Mhm. I think, and so we have really good notes from how these different programs were run in the past. And of course, the folks that ran those programs are also happy to be contacted, and we can ask them questions and so forth. But I believe there is a fundraising component that goes along with the concert series that we've traditionally sent out a letter to the donors who've donated in the past and said, will you please make a gift for the concert series? And then we have a schedule for when we've done the concerts and so forth. So we
I would
kind of
hope
want
that
to.
given, assuming that the council approves it and that we get Jordan and another half-time staff person,
Mhm.
that we make a strong commitment to doing the music. I think we do it January, February, March, January, end of January. isn't it?
Yeah, end of January, or February, March, and April.
Because we gear it toward the locals, and it's something that when we were arguing, debating, encouraging the council to give some funding, is we kept on mentioning Christmas at the Adobes. It brings in,
Mhm.
serves locals and visitors, the candlelight concert, which generally is for the locals. And so I would hope that we can commit to those two. Those are two really nice events that speak to the history and culture of Monterey.
So we have they've already convened organizations to start talking about Christmas in the Adobes again, and we're in on those discussions. I'm looking at Jordan because he's going to be the one attending those meetings.
Yeah.
But until my successor comes along, and then that person will join too, I think. Anyway, so those conversations are already happening. So I think we're committed to Christmas in the Adobes. And then it's just a question of the concert series. Are we going to have enough capacity, and what kind of funding do we need, and where are we with that?
Hey, don't we have some funds left over, don't we, from the music series in the past?
That is a great
I
question.
think we had 2,000 or 3,000, or I can't remember the
I
number.
think it was close to 3,000.
Okay, that's a good question.
It's
But it's
again,
something that Jordan should look up and be familiar with, the funding of that.
well, that's why I think we need this discussion of the funding sources that the commission has some access to. There's a column in the work program that's labeled City of Monterey Committed Museums Trust Fund. Now, that's different from the Ferguson Fund.
Yeah.
See, that's where I don't have a clue where all these little pockets of money are. And if we're to be responsible for the city's funds in this particular area, we should know more about them.
Well, I think that, if our assistant city manager were here, he would remind us, and he has to remind me, that, so really it's the city staff that manage the funds, and your role is to make sure that, the museums are accessible and appreciated, and that there are good programs and so forth. And so I think that it's incumbent on the city staff, me and Jordan and Francesca, to provide you with a financial picture. So I think it's not so much that you have funds to spend, but that you direct the activities that we have to show we have funds for.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
John?
Who? When they do the constitutional convention reenactment, who
Yes.
pays for that?
So it's in our budget.
It's
We
in
have
our
a-
budget.
Yeah, well, it's in the museum's budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have a line item in the museum's budget for paying for the actors. For that, yes.
Do you know if there are plans for this year or not?
So we actually have been in contact with, and I actually turned that the troop leader over to Jordan, his contact information. Last year, we didn't have 100% compliance from them with the vaccination requirements that the city had. And so because they couldn't all provide verification that they've been vaccinated, then we didn't go forward with that reenactment. But this year, it looks like they have 100% compliance, or they think they will. And so we already have started talking about it, because of course they have to
Okay.
start rehearsing.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments on this? So can we agree to postpone or to revisit this after the new director is ensconced?
Yes, and I think you might wanna, so one thing is that the new director, of course, is gonna be bombarded with all kinds of things to, that will be taking that person's attention. And so it'll be good to sort of be thinking, and you could, of course, just be thinking on your own, sort of, what do you see as the priorities? And then, when you have the new director, you can then have that conversation of what you see as the priorities for this year.
So,
It's your work plan.
so you're suggesting a subcommittee to do this?
Might want a subcommittee to do that.
We have any volunteers?
I'll be glad to volunteer.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah.
So. Anybody else have?
Is this the strategic plan we're talking about?
Yeah, we're talking about the strategic plan, sort of prioritizing what's there.
Okay,
So,
I've worked on that before. I'll volunteer.
Do we not have a strategic plan subcommittee already?
We did have one.
You did have one.
oh, is it?
Who was on it? I'm just trying to simplify
Yeah, sure.
proliferation of subcommittees. here.
I know John was on it.
Which John?
John,
I was, at least for a while, but
Okay.
I don't know if we
Is it-
deactivated it or.
My point is, if we already have a subcommittee.
Yeah.
let's-
Okay, so do we want to just revert to the previous subcommittee?
and they're listed where?
I don't think they're on this chart, so I'll just have to go back into the files and,
Yeah.
If you, maybe if you send us all an email,
Yeah.
and if one of us who was on that committee
needs to
doesn't
be
want to
done.
be, then we might have new volunteers who would replace that
I'm
person.
actually afraid I might have been on that committee, so. Maybe, good I said anything.
All right, so we're gonna get an email with candidates for the subcommittee to discuss the work plan. All right, anything else on this issue? Is there public comment on our work work program.
To make a public comment, please come to the podium. Otherwise, there are no public comments, Chair Evans.
Okay, so we're ready to receive a proposal and approval and approve the gift to the city of Monterey of Young Readers Mural to be installed at the Monterey Public Library. And so, Inga, will you want to lead that one?
Sure. So we actually have some presenters here who can walk us through this proposal. So there's a group of folks, the Sovereign family, who wanted to do something special in honor of Barbara Sovereign, who taught reading and worked in the schools with kids, helping them learning to read. And they wanted to do a special piece of art and thought it would be appropriate in the library. And so we identified a location in the library, which is our upstairs terrace, which is enclosed. And there's a nice big blank wall where we could have a mural painted. And so an artist was selected and some concepts were explored. And the idea is that this is a piece of art that belongs to the city. So anytime there's a possible piece of art to go to the city, we need this body to approve it. So I think we can just do a presentation and then you can discuss the proposal.
Hi, my name is John Sovereign, and thank you, Inga, for that introduction. And I wanted to thank you for all the energy you put into this. You've been really helpful getting us this far, and Bill has also been very helpful in helping us, find a location. So you have the 4-page proposal in the agenda packet. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. We see this as being, a celebration of reading and youth literature. The artist, Natalia Corazza, is here. I'll introduce her shortly. But she's come up with a design that, really brings in a couple dimensions about what stories, youth are interested in, and what are the things that are being passed down, over time through these stories about knowledge, about adventure. So I'm very excited about the content and the theme. And I think that it'll be a wonderful addition to the library space, and will also, be part of, I think, some of the people on the commission have been instrumental in having new murals be created in Monterey, and I think it's wonderful to try and continue that activity in a broader way. So as Inga said, my mother was a reading specialist in the public schools. She was also active in the Library Friends organization. My father and her were known for their chocolate fountain at the annual wine and chocolate fundraiser. I got to help them do that a couple times. And she was also both, during her teaching years and in retirement, very active in an organization called Reading is Fundamental. And that program is really, its main thrust is to help provide books to school children of all ages who may not have very many books at home. Pretty fundamental to, reading capability is, being able to read, at home. So hopefully this, is something that resounds with this commission's purpose, and if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Otherwise, I can just introduce the artist, Natalia Carrasco.
But maybe you could say something about, because I know that the commission has a art policy that they follow about what kind of art is accepted by the city. And one is that it's local artists, right, is one kind of criteria that's often used. And another is that if it has a tie-in with Monterey.
Sure. So if you look at the concept drawing, it was distributed. Just one aspect up down in the right-hand corner is a youth looking at a book on a rock, and there's limited in this version of the drawing is there's a snail or a seashell in front of him, but that's a call out to between Pacific Tides, tide pools, Ed Ricketts, our beautiful coastline, and the passing on of knowledge through books, the exploration of our natural habitats and surroundings. So that's just one aspect, and that's something we're also trying to do a little bit more of in the design in terms of connections to Monterey. That's something we're going to be presenting the final design to the Board of Trustees later this month.
Thank you.
Well, without further ado, let me introduce the artist. She's a very talented young woman who calls Monterey her home, Natalia Corazza.
Hello, I'm Natalia Corazza. Thank you for having me. I was born and raised in Monterey, and I left Monterey for college, where I studied painting and drawing at California College of the Arts. And I was brought back home because of the pandemic. And since then have been very involved in the artist community around here, and am excited about this opportunity to make art for the city of Monterey, especially as someone who grew up going to the library and using the library. I wanted to mention that part of the budget that was made included an assistant that I could use, and the assistant that I would use would be a youth artist from the Youth Arts Collective, where I work as a administrative assistant and mentor that would give them direct knowledge for something that would help them in their artist career. Yeah, that's the main spiel about me. When I made the design, it instantly came to me because what was provided in the initial materials that Don provided, he said he wanted it to be kind of exploratory, but I also did want to include a little bits and pieces of Monterey. But one of the things I personally love about Monterey is its international connection. And I felt that this was a moment in which the exploratory themes from the books and the international connections in Monterey could all tie together in this great moment and engage its viewers. So yeah, if you have any questions about the design or about me or anything else for the project, open.
Okay, Mike, you want to say anything?
Yes, and I plan to recuse myself on the vote, but I'd like to say that I think this is in proper for the commission to be considering as a public art item, and we've encouraged public art in the past and have a planning effort to develop more sites of public art, and are working in conjunction with people like the Old Monterey Foundation to produce more mural-like public art. And Natalia is, I think, a great local talent, but has a lot of background in international work, and has presented a really nice concept. And I hope that the commission will approve.
All right, anybody else?
No comment.
Are we accepting suggestions about design elements? Sure, I mean.
Sure.
Yeah.
I like the project a whole lot. I mean, but a couple of things. The lighthouse is a generic lighthouse.
Right.
Uh,
Point Pinos.
doesn't look like Point Pinos.
Yep.
The other thing which I can't tell from the drawing is diversity of the children, different ethnic backgrounds.
Yeah, I was definitely intentional about including that, which is harder to tell in a
Yeah.
not fully colored rendered drawing, but that is something that is important to me.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice.
And besides, between the Pacific tides, I don't know if you're gonna show the titles on the books or whatever. I think another one, of course, would be to recognize Robert Louis Stevenson and Treasure Island.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it's such a local impact.
Yes, I agree. John and I have discussed these things for a while and we've explored it. But we wanted to present the initial design to you all first and see what you had to say. So I appreciate those comments.
So when you present it to the library board, is there going to be sort of a mock-up? Or
So we
are we
have
still
the,
dealing with the black and white?
we have the mock-up in our packet, but I think there's a color version of it.
Yeah, not yet, but yeah, definitely our plan is when we go to the board of trustees on the 17th, there'll be a full color drawing.
Yeah, so a final mock-up is always made in full color and will have to be approved by every part of this process, but especially the last meeting is the most important one. And that would, once that's approved, then we can go about setting a date to executing the mural.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? How about public comment? Thank
Is
you.
there any,
Oh, thank you.
there's not any public comment and there's none online either.
Okay, so I think we need a motion.
I move approval of the gift.
I second.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I think we approved it.
Great.
Good luck with it.
Have fun with it.
And so we have reached the point where we're here for commissioner comments. John O'Neill, thank you.
I'm continued to be impressed with the amount of work Jordan does for someone who's not full-time and then spend a month out with COVID. It's incredible. Thank you. And well done on the grant request. I'm very impressed with that. And I appreciate talking to Francesca all the time. She keeps us on task all the time and informed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim?
To agree with what John just said, I think it's all, I've only been on this committee for less than a year and I've actually learned a lot every time I come here. And I appreciate what all three of you guys do and getting all of the information we needed. And I know Inga, this is your last meeting and most of my work with you has been outside of this meeting and you're just a delight to work with and I'm gonna miss you when you're not here.
Oh, I'll miss all of you. So
Mike?
Oh, I thank the commission for approving the memorial piece, and I think it will be something that we'll all be proud of.
John?
Well, from a medical background, I did do extensive research on human cloning. And unfortunately, Inga didn't come up with anything yet. So we're gonna have to say goodbye to you and we'll miss you very dearly. Thank you.
Maybe we can keep her.
Yeah. Well, I considered that, but I found out that's against the law.
Oh, okay.
Well, I've worked with Inga for a long time, both as a city staff member on the library board and with the museum, and I really appreciate your strong strengths. You're a great professional employee, and it's gonna be a big loss to the city. You've always been very positive. I think one of the best examples of that is working with the commission during these short staffing needs and helping us to keep all three museums open and the museum functioning very well. So we'll miss you tremendously, but we all hope that you have a great retirement in Mariposa.
Thank you. Thank you. And I have to say that everything that we've accomplished has been because of all of you. So keep that in mind. You're a really, really great commission. And of course, we have really great staff in Jordan and Francesca.
Yeah, I want to compliment Jordan on his history of the Buffalo Soldiers. I think you've got your thesis already written. And it's hard to express my appreciation for Inga and all you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's really been a real pleasure to work with all of you and I'll miss that.
Hey. Oh, we're standing up. Can we be adjourned?
Yes, okay with me?
So we're adjourned.
All righty.
Yeah.